doctors. It's so profoundly true. If you're going to run a movement and you're going to run a community enforcing and projecting good health for your community, it begins with you. Do you have a primary doctor? That's one. If you do, you're most likely to do better than those who don't. The ER should not be your primary care center. No, because they don't know you. The primary doctor knows you better and knows your history and knows the meds you're taking, how you're taking it, where you're taking it, the side effects, and looks at your blood work to see what's the outcome. So that's how it begins. And then we begin to, as a community, as a family, as a matter of fact, who is in your family? What story do you have? What stories run in your family? Is it a heart attack? Is it blood pressure? Is it diabetes? Is it Alzheimer's? That's the kind of story you tell your family. Because I always tell you, whose genes are you carrying? Not mine. You're carrying genes. So you have to share those information for your brothers and cousins and sisters, everybody. We need to know that. As we begin to do that, we begin to build a community where, one, from our churches, from our mosque, community centers, programs like this, where we begin to share information on what we need to do to begin to create a consortium for healthcare equity, justice, and access for our community. And then get involved in the political process. I call myself a medical advocate because what I do, I run everywhere talking about health. And I just told my sister I was in the capital on Thursday. I came back, drove there, came back Thursday night. What was I doing? Knocking on doors and senators' offices in Capitol. Hey, we need to do this. This is a responsibility that we have to have for our communities. So that's how we begin to build a healthy community for each and every one of us. And then holding, if you're not in the process, you lose out. If you're not at the table, you will be the menu. So how do we begin to build a healthy community? Getting involved, taking responsibility, and owning up for what what you need to do, and being our brother and sisters keeper. Thank you.
Amen. I love that. No, I really love that because we just talked about voter registration and everything like that. If you think about it, right? Oftentimes we say, oh well, these politicians, they don't come to us. They don't come to this area. Well, if you think about it, they don't really have the need to, right? Because we're not going to vote. So they're not going to come here. They're not going to consider us. So you have to remember that. The more we register and the more we show up, then they know that they have to influence us to vote their way, all right? And that's very important in understanding how we approach our health, how do we get the right people in office, et cetera, et cetera. So again, one thing I really want to encourage you, if you're not registered to vote, please, before you leave today, register to vote. Jason, when money is already tight, how do we prioritize our health savings and insurance? And just give us some insight into insurance, especially health insurance.
Certainly, and insurance is an area that a lot of people are not as familiar with, and unfortunately, because people are not as familiar with it, they don't necessarily purchase it, and they have, I guess, misconceptions about insurance. When we look at health insurance, you can get health insurance through your job, or if you are an entrepreneur, then you have to purchase it on the market, unlike through your job. Through your job, you probably get it a lot cheaper, and it's going to give you the ability to go see a doctor. You may get a certain major medical plan, or you get a plan that gives you an in-network plan. In-network plans give you the ability where you can see only doctors in-network, whereas a major medical plan, you can see any doctor that covers that insurance, but you pay maybe a little bit more, a certain percentage. So it's important that if you're not employed, you find a way to get insurance, because the cost of healthcare is very expensive and it's going to continue to go up. Then when we look at insurance from a life insurance perspective, that's when it gets even more complicated, because again, people are not as knowledgeable about it. But when we look at insurance, you have term insurance and you have permanent insurance. When most people think of life insurance, they think of it as two types, right? Term and whole life, right? Well, whole life is one form of permanent insurance. You have different types of permanent insurance. Universal life insurance, index universal life insurance, variable life insurance, and it's built on how your cash value grows. So if you have a term policy, that's going to be just based on you're insured and it's pure insurance for the term that you take out. It could be 10-year, 20-year, or 30-year term. If you have a permanent insurance, which I recommend, able to living, in addition to that, living benefits, and that's where this permanent insurance is very advantageous, because when it comes to long-term care, or if you have to go into a nursing home or assisted living where someone maybe come into your household, if you don't have long-term care insurance, then you have, one of the examples that a lot of people aren't aware of, if they are 65 and above and they have Medicare, Medicare is going to take care of certain provisions, but it won't take care of long-term care. So there's life insurance policies that will give you a death benefit, a cash value buildup, and living benefits while you're living. It's going to protect you for critical care, for terminal care, or chronic care. You have diabetes, you have a heart attack. So these are the things that we have to better understand, and as a financial advisor, it's my job to help and break it down for individuals. So that's a breakdown of insurance.
Well done. And let me bring a medical into that too, right? We talked about, he just mentioned long-term care, okay? I work in the Medicare population, and we see a lot of Alzheimer's. And they're saying now diabetes is like Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes, because all of the sugar is leading to these memory problems. Communities of color and just underserved communities, point blank, period. So when we're talking about, well, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to plan around that? Understanding the insurance that you can have now to protect your loved ones in the future, all right? Amen. So what are some common legal mistakes, Shannon, that you see Black professionals and healthcare workers make?
So I'm going to take it a little bit broader. Just legal mistakes in general that we all kind of don't think about. And the biggest one for me is not making a plan for our life and life afterwards. So Jason just laid out what happens in getting health insurance and building your wealth. We talked about protecting and advocacy, and that's all incredibly important. And then we don't think, oh, I'm not gonna deal with what happens. I'm not gonna make an estate plan. Everybody in here needs an estate plan. What is an estate plan? It's essentially planning for what happens to the things that you hold near and dear, your assets, right? So we have to decide, what are you gonna do with those things? As a business professional, it's even more important because we build our wealth, we build these businesses and creating a succession plan. So that's something, especially in the Black community, it's kind of, don't deal with it, the state is gonna deal with it for you. And we're gonna pass on, and we're gonna lose wealth in that process. So I work with a lot of communities in Brooklyn and here in Jersey, ensuring that our community, that we're taking care to protect our wealth and passing that on. Let's say you're married, right, and you have children. If you're married and you have kids and you have some wealth, what happens is the law says that when you pass, all of your wealth goes to your spouse if you all have the same children, right? Let's say, take another example. Maybe you have kids before you got married. So what happens then is the first 25% of your wealth goes to your spouse, and then we split the second half. Half of it goes to your spouse and the other half goes to your kids. Now, what if, let's say, maybe there's an estranged kid where maybe that kid is not, you don't want someone to inherit something. You have the ability to take control of that, and that's through creating your estate plan. So you can do that by creating a will. That's the document that says upon